For those of you who haven't met me yet, my name's Ivana Brown. I'm the Head of Operations and Standards at NABERS. Today's session is Accelerating Success, Measuring and Managing for a Sustainable Future. So I want to thank everyone for coming today. We have a great panel. It's going to be a great panel discussion, and we're going to hear some great perspectives from the asset owner perspective as well as the assessor and how they really work together to rate buildings and improve the performance of their asset. So I'll start with some introductions. On the end, we have Stephen Brammer, Senior Director, Net Zero Carbon Assets at JLL. Next, we have Joanne Gamble, General Manager, Sustainability Investment Management Australia, Lease. Diana Rica-Roa, Director and Founder, ESG Plus. And next to me is Vass, Tzavaras, Director of Engineering, Frasers Hospitality, Australia. So thanks everyone for being here today. I'm going to start off the panel today with a couple of questions that I have, but we will be taking audience questions as well. We're going to have a microphone roving around the room, and you can also submit your questions through the app. So you can do that in the room or if you're joining in online. So have a think about what you'd like to ask the panel as we go, and we'll get to those in a few moments. So I thought we could start off by talking about the NABERS program. It's really built on the premise that you cannot manage what you don't measure. I thought Carlos showed some really great slides this morning, graphs, about how NABERS ratings do improve their performance over time. And Lease has a really long history of improving performance of their assets. So Joanne, I wanted to go to you first and ask you, how does Lease use NABERS ratings to improve the performance?
Thanks. So for those who don't know, Lease, we don't just design and construct and develop buildings, we actually manage buildings. So now 30 billion portfolio, there's about 90 assets, and probably the best way to describe it, like we're like NABERS groupies, man. Like we have NABERS across our whole portfolio. You know, you may have seen my boss Anne, who was up on the video before, you know, excited about the embodied carbon tool. You know, we're super excited about that. We've been really super excited about the warehouse tool because that was a piece in our portfolio that wasn't measured. Because we really, like NABERS for us is not just a baseline for performance, and it's a good communicator for our investors and tenants, but we use it actively with our centre managers, with our operations managers, you know, looking at how it can improve the performance of the building. So yeah, as we said, we've been using it for many years, and it's something that we have found really, really helpful for that.
Great. And Stephen, you work closely with Joe in that, and I'm interested to know from an assessor's perspective, how do you support Joe or your other clients in improving ratings, improving performance of assets?
Yeah, well, in terms of being inside a property company, we're working at this from many perspectives. So we're working with the cap markets teams in terms of the actual value of the assets, through to the operations teams in generating savings for both landlords and tenants. And you know, as a NABERS assessor, we're seeing that you can generate like immense value for clients, but furthermore, you can defend the value of their assets against brown discounts from the market, to devaluing their assets due to poor performance. And we're doing our first round of assessing with Lease at the moment. We've got about 70 assets on the go, and it's all about those first steps that we saw from Office, where it's identifying and collecting the data on all the buildings, seeing how they benchmark against each other, and then picking the opportunities. Which ones should we need the TLC or the upgraded metering? And there's some superstars that just come straight out, 5.5 stars, bang, straight off the bat, you know, like, yeah. You know, it's great to see, but you know, there's others. They need that little helping hand.
Yes.
And further to that, you know, we're using NABERS as the way of not only standardising the rating of the assets, and benchmarking them, but then also using that in conjunction with net zero carbon assessments, with NABERS improvement plans, to work out what's the CapEx strategy for these, how much needs to be invested, and where do we get the money? Is government going to give us some grants for heat pumps?
Great. Yeah, so quite a broad range of things that you can do to help asset owners really improve their performance. That's great.
Yeah.
Diana, Vass, you guys work a lot with hotels. What's been your experience there?
Well, first of all, thank you for inviting hotels to participate in the conference. It's really important for the sector to start playing a role. And we're pleased to hear the CBD is going to roll the mandatory disclosure to other sectors. So we hope, it covers 24/7 buildings that are relying on gas. So yes, the NABERS ratings have a great opportunity in hotels because it's a good start to start measuring the energy performance and water performance of the ratings. It is early days for hotels, so the star rating we're finding that is not as important as the NABERS process itself, because with the NABERS process you get a chance to assess the building from the NABERS lens and standards, starting to check how much visibility you have over the data and how accurate it is. You also get a chance to visit physically the site and uncover opportunities. Also check how the hotel is being operated, so your recommendations are viable. Lastly, I think you have a benchmark that is government-backed, that is going to help you benchmark your hotel year on year. And if you have a good star rating result, the owners might have access to green financing instruments such as green loans.
Yeah, okay.
I can add to that and say that these assessments have really opened the eyes to people in the sustainability piece that haven't really had the exposure to that piece previously. Going right up the chain, it's quite important that we have the ability to understand what I'll give you a hotel engineer's perspective. We're looking at data all the time. We're going through and doing individual meter readings and making sure everything's working correctly. But seeing what we see and then trying to transfer that up the line so the asset owners actually understand what we're trying to do is quite a bit of a challenge. So an assessor being able to deliver that for us in the way of a NABERS rating really assists our process to get things done. CapEx improvements such as recently we've done electrification of our Sydney kitchen, which has already been completed. We've done significant impacted works with our plant rooms, heat exchangers. We've replaced every HVAC unit within the site, and that's all been attributed to, in some part, these NABERS ratings.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like having independent third-party benchmarking really helps to communicate the importance of where you need to drive investment, where you need to put your efforts. Yeah, that's great. Is there anything you guys wanted to add to that?
I'd say that from an international perspective, we've got a lot of investors looking at purchasing assets in Australia. They might have heard of NABERS, but they don't really know what it is or what it does. But once you start talking about stars, they go, well, 5 stars is better than 4.5. Great. And the next question is, how does that compare to, say, EU regulations, etc.? So from an international scale, you want to be able to globally benchmark, but it's just a great and easy tool that almost anyone can understand, and I think that's one of the things that's led to such success.
Yeah, okay. Really drives decision making, really helps with the communication kind of right up the chain. Fantastic. Reminder, questions, make sure you're popping them into the app or having a think because we'll be getting to them soon. The next thing I kind of wanted to ask you guys is improving performance is one challenge, but actually getting the data to rate a building is a challenge in and of itself. And I'm interested to know, as assessors, you have to work really closely with asset teams and working with industrial sectors, hotels, they're both kind of emerging markets when it comes to NABERS ratings. How do you find that process goes? What strategies do you have to streamline it? I might start with you, Diana.
Yes.
What have you done working with Frasers to help to streamline that process?
Well, Frasers Hospitality has been one of the early adopters of the NABERS hotel tool, so they are not strangers to the whole process. We went through a discovery phase, both with Frasers Hospitality and NABERS, because their portfolio has a variety of hotel types. So we needed to understand where the service apartments, boutique hotels, and accor-operated hotels fit into the same tool. Now, Frasers Hospitality is using NABERS ratings as a starting point to other important work. That is metering reviews, improving documentations. At Capri in Brisbane, we actually went one step further and used the climate active NABERS pathway to actually calculate the emissions of the building. And right now, the new challenge that we have taken on board is doing the first Green Star Performance portfolio for the whole Australian portfolio. And the NABERS ratings are playing a key role in that project itself. But anyone new to NABERS can find the whole NABERS rating a little bit daunting. So I think as assessors, the first thing is to actually use your experience and knowledge of the rules to actually simplify and demystify the process for your clients. In hotels, it can be the general manager or the director of engineering or the maintenance manager. Once you do that, the process is very simple. It is really follow the rules and the documentation requirements. But for you to be able to get to the point of simplifying, you need to understand the complexities. So what has worked well for us is to actually go beyond the streamlined process. So we have approached the NABERS rating in a two simultaneous way. One is work with the client sim to the whole process, and in the end just give them useful findings. And the other is actually spend more of our time on each rating, learning the sector, and communicating back to NABERS our findings or any certifier so they can actually improve these tools. And that has worked really well for us. We see there's an added value to put that extra work for our clients and for third-party certifiers like you guys. So I think one thing that I will say is that the hotel sector has a learning curve, and there's a lot of challenges. It can be, the different types of accommodations that are getting fit into the same hotel tool. The different uses of space and areas that we find in these premises. And we keep saying hotel tool, but in reality it's accommodations tool. Yeah, there's different types. But we're seeing little by little more accommodation types participating in the NABERS program, which is fantastic. A good example is campus living villages, who they own student accommodations in the UK, the US, and in Australia. And they actually stepped up and volunteered to rate all their Australian portfolio. So this is the first student accommodation portfolio that NABERS are getting data for. So now they have a full set of data for this sector that right now they classify it as atypical. So I'm very excited to see what NABERS is going to do with this new data. So that's been fantastic. So from our point of view, we are very passionate about this sector. We wanted to see it grow. We see a lot of potential, on what the tool can become. It can become a lot more robust and useful for the sector if we actually put the work on it. We believe that these new tools, when they are released into the wild, the assessor has a responsibility or a duty to actually go the extra mile just to make sure these tools succeed. And if you happen to be doing a lot of ratings in a specific sector, just maybe zoom out and see how can you be contributing this information to the sector, to the third-party certifiers. And to the topic of our breakout session is sometimes you need to decelerate to actually accelerate success.
Yeah. Vass, what about from your perspective, from the asset owner side? What role do you think you can play in really streamlining that process?
Look, we've appointed an asset. Throughout our assets, we've got developed a special project manager that has overseen rights to all of our sustainability items and drives that from all of our perspectives. We're utilising tools like Envisi to calculate to compile all of our data and then deliver that across all of any opportunity that we have to grow our understanding of where our consumption is being rooted down to one specific point, and it's been managed by that one specific person that can allow us to develop an understanding across all properties at once. We have, it seems regardless of how much of a no-brainer an upgrade may be or what have you, the fruit doesn't have to lie that low for us to be able to work on what we can do. The ability to see and calculate the amount of consumption that we have is key. We found that in specific sites like ours, we have mixed-use facilities that have very little opportunity to give 100% of accurate data, because the way that they were designed, and it happens with a lot of older buildings, you can't segregate that energy from one metre to another. And that performance is noted on our NABERS ratings because you can only do a full metre. And the lack of sub-metering has really delivered us a disadvantage when it comes to those NABERS ratings. We are in the process now of delivering solutions to that, but until that happens, a mixed-use facility that contains a service department like ours does will always be disadvantaged until we make that change. So it's driving our thinking towards what we can do. And we're talking with university, faculties of built environment. We're talking with people like Race to 2030 to go forward and move into positive areas such as these. But somebody like Diana, who's in with our assessment process pretty much from the beginning, has learnt the challenges that we've had with these sites, has taken our perspective to NABERS and said, hey, look, you know, these service departments don't really fit into the mould of a normal hotel. I mean, when you consider that majority of our sites have their own kitchen, their own laundries, you know, rather than just in a box with a bathroom and a bedroom, you know, it makes a big difference as to the opportunity that we have to perform. And we're working on that, and NABERS have been helping, as Diana has too, and it's a large piece for us. I guess when you consider that and the present challenges of actually how to create value from a NABERS rating for a business like ours, it's also important. These are businesses after all, and delivering a compelling case to that proves that you can decrease costs and improve revenues is very important when you consider the alternative of just simply stating that we're reducing our carbon emissions.
Yep. Yep. You mentioned metering. So NABERS is driving you to include some extra metering.
Yes.
What are the benefits of that beyond just a better NABERS rating?
If I can look, every day my teams go around and they physically look at every metre that we have there. They write them all down, calculate them, put them in their devices, whatever they need to do. The value with that is not only to understand what we're consuming from that metre, but it's also to go around and have a look and see, all right, that pipe work that I walk past every day that I don't really take a notice of, that's got a small pinhole leak. That's going to add to our consumption issues. That HVAC unit that's over there is whirring a little bit, and that will also entail further reduction of efficiency, which once again consumes energy, and then it does it reduces our ratings and our ability to perform. So it's not just about going through and physically having all of the data there, it's getting out there into the field and seeing exactly what's available and what's happening to your sites before the data comes to you. Sub-metering will deliver a lot more. You can segregate issues, you can put everything that's conducted in 1 metre and then use that to improve that metre, let's call it, the energy consumed by that metre, whether it's energy, whether it's water, whatever it is. If you have the ability to look at that meter and say, all right, this device, and this device is on that, you can also reduce the requirement and consumption on that meter by making the small changes until you have the opportunity to make the bigger ones through a CapEx project.
Okay. Yeah, so really you cannot manage what you don't measure.
No, it comes back to it full circle.
Joe, you work with the industrial sector, which is one of our emerging sectors, I would say. What's been your experience in the industrial sector?
Yeah, I think, well, we were very excited when the actual tool came out because, we've had huge experience with really good experience with NABERS in the office and the retail space. So having that in this other asset class, which is, a very large part of our portfolio and one that we couldn't really, well, to be frank, we'd been trying to get initiatives into that sector, that asset type, similar to office and retail, and kind of had a lot of pushback. Whereas actually NABERS, we were part of the pilot, and then we're also now, we're now rolling across the whole portfolio. And super interesting, probably won't fully disclose, but during the pilot, let's just say we got an interesting score, but the score actually one of the things that NABERS assessment pilot showed us, or actually showed my asset management team and my investors, was like, if you had more metering, you would have a better score. And they're like, oh, really? And I'm like, yeah, that metering that we've been asking you to do the last 2 budgets, that sort of conversation. And so it's actually been really great because NABERS is a language, even if they don't fully understand it, it is a language that we've been able to use to communicate and to help us drive the performance. So you may have seen we've just got the first 5.5-star NABERS for warehouses at one of our assets. And I think one of the other things for Lease is, as some of you may not fully understand or know, but we have our sustainability targets for our company, one of them being a 1.5 degree aligned company in line with the Paris Agreement. That has a net zero target by 2025 for scope 1 and 2, but it has an absolute zero target, and that's scope 1, 2 and 3 by 2040. And that is no offsets. And that scope 3 is not just the climate active definition, it is actually includes, and by our calculations, includes upstream embodied carbon, which is why we're super excited about the embodied carbon tool, but it includes downstream and our tenant power, which actually has meant that we need to engage our tenants. And so with the industrial tool in particular, that's actually the one that we got the 5.5-star. That was actually a really exciting project because the tenant was really on board. Like, our tenants want to know, they want to know how our particular tenant at Villawood, they already felt they were doing good things with energy efficiency. So NABERS gave them this, benchmark for them to see how they're going. And, we're finding that tenants want to know more. So, we can use the assessors to help educate our tenants. And it's a service that we provide to our tenants. So, yeah, it's a really great way as part of our relationship with our tenants. And that is across office and retail as well.
Great. How do you find getting the asset teams on board to get all the data together?
Data is the biggest hurdle. Yeah. Data is the biggest hurdle. It's hard. I think everyone finds it hard. Generally, it's 2024 though, so we should be able to get smarter meters, rolling out. We're rolling out. The good thing NABERS does, it helps us direct our efforts to some of where we are seeing gaps in what we need to measure, and we're definitely using that on our metering strategy for industrial in this coming budget. And we're also, I think it is. I think the great thing, in a weird way, people like having some. They like the little badge, the NABERS badge. So it's like, well, you need to do it for NABERS. Oh, okay, I'll do it. That's actually been a really great conversation to have.
Does it breed a bit of competition between sites?
It's just a little bit.
Even when you go out on site, how do you find it's received?
So it's interesting with the industrial sites. The tenants definitely a different species to the office tenants. And one of the key things we found is that the data sharing thing is just alien to them. We've never signed so many NDAs to get data from them. There's this litigious element. But also now that we're entering into the era of international sustainability standards, the industrial rating is coming in at just a time where data collection can't be just, we grabbed a few invoices, wrote them into a spreadsheet. You need platforms, you need traceability, otherwise the ACCC is going to ask you to demonstrate how did you achieve all of that. And it's, for all new industries, and when we see, we're moving into small retail and schools and everything, it's all the first time data collection. It's going to be the fun.
Yeah, it's always harder the first time round, isn't it? Yeah. So what are some of your tips and tricks to kind of alleviate that first time hurdle?
Oh, it's definitely communication. It's getting everyone onto a call, introducing everyone so that they know who you are, why you're doing this, why it's important to the business. If you just walk into a place with no introductions as an assessor and say, give me some data, they're going to go, well, this is new, I don't want to do it, I don't know who you are. So understanding the greater importance and how that fits into the role of everyone from sort of portfolio manager, asset manager, the people on the ground, the tenants, really helps. And seeing the results and being able to give them a star rating at the end and say, you did good. I love that too.
Yes, sharing the results.
Yeah.
Part of that communication is also the benefits, right? We're not just doing this for the sake of doing it. There's a benefit for everyone in that chain. And I think particularly for the warehouse one in particular, for many of you who've looked at that tool, it is very tenant dependent, and industrial is one of those asset types that has traditionally had, here's the shed, don't tell me what you do in it, just pay the rent please. To be brutally honest with that. But the tenants are changing, the tenants are definitely changing, and I think, industrial is the flavour of the month if anyone's, seen the whale on leasing and things. But that's going to come off eventually, right? And then they're going to be the pick of the choice will be, tenants will want to see, sheds that will give them a better energy efficiency because they know that's a cost reduction for them. So I think they'll see those benefits. We've been really fortunate, I think, with our communications because of our Scope 3 target. We'd sort of already been talking to a lot of our tenants because we've been trying to roll out a solar initiative for our industrial. So it's part of not just the communication, but the collaboration. I think that whole landlord-tenant relationship is one that we've definitely had in office and retail, but now industrial's kind of heading that much more collaborative aspect, which is really good.
Great. I might just check in to see if we have any questions from the audience. We've got a few hands up, so if you can get one of the roving mics around, thank you. Make sure you speak into the microphone nice and loud.
Thank you. Peter Lowndes from ECMEC. I was just sort of a bit of a crossover between that graph that Carlos put up, and I think the thing that jumped out at me was the recent upturn in the emissions, and I was wondering, probably more to Joanne and Steve as long-time adopters of the project, why you think that kick-up is there? Is that building creep? And what will you be doing to your assets? If you are seeing that indeed, would you then go into maybe retro commissioning, controls upgrades, or what other initiatives would you do to combat that?
That's a good question. I'll speak particularly, because I'll be really specific. Barangaroo, we've had it's been up there as one of the highest rated buildings. One of the things that we've found with Barangaroo, not to fully critique NABERS, but we've actually seen huge return to work, and it's been really quick. We're 97% leased, 90 plus occupancy, and we've really seen that return quite quickly. So we've seen, for us in that office space, a return to work in the comparative. But the one thing is, when people return to work, they've forgotten some of the benefits of like what to do, like particularly our neighbours' waste. You know, they didn't understand what you have to do for waste, and so we've actually now thinking about a whole new education piece to refresh everyone about what's happened. I think COVID has really affected, or we've definitely seen it affected our performance and how these certifications actually take something like COVID into account. I don't know how they would normally do that, but it has definitely been one of the things that we've seen.
We definitely need an explanation from Carlos on exactly what that blip is, because I think he's aggregated a lot of data there to look at. And I think one of the things that's driving that downward trend in terms of the entire stock of buildings is that we're bringing on new buildings, and they're coming in at like 150 megajoules per square metre, not 300 megajoules a square metre. So as those become rated, and it takes like 18 months, 2 years before they get their first rating, you'll start to see those numbers go down just because of new buildings. But the existing stock, we need to continue to focus on that. Looking at those numbers compared to CREM net zero targets, I mean, the typical energy use intensity for CREM net zero, it's going to be like 30% greater than 6 stars. So I'm hoping for the magical 7 star, please make it happen, because there's a long way to go, and we need to take all those existing assets on that path.
We probably should ask Carlos, what that is, but because I think one thing which is exciting is that NABERS is expanding, and I think you're getting, to be frank, some of the lower performing assets are coming into the NABERS family, which is excellent, but then obviously it's going to push everyone down a little bit, but then hopefully it'll come back up. So.
Yeah, well, we have the graphs to show that it does. We had one more question in the audience, just over there.
Hi. Hi. Just a quick question. Just a quick question around data. And as a ESG consultant, I find getting data is very hard for a warehouse building. So, if how NABERS for offices is compulsory, what happens in near future if NABERS for warehouse becomes compulsory? How do you see your tenants would react, and what would be the implications for that?
So the question is around warehouses in particular in the industrial sector. If it were to become mandatory, how would tenants react, and how would we get the data from them that we need?
I'll go first.
Yeah, holding some thoughts. You go first.
Yeah. I mean, I was one of those people standing up saying, I've been looking at ABGR and NABERS for the last, 20, 25 years, and we had this exact issue with office buildings as they started to get rated, that we had to reconfigure their metering, separate tenants from landlords, retail from base building, and create all that segregation. But that's happened over the last 20 years. We had a building. I've lost my mic. Yep. We had a building come up for transaction in Canberra, the Geosciences Laboratories, which was built about 1998, predated NABERS. Got a 1.5 star rating because it was just configured the wrong way for it to be rated. In reality, it was performing at, say, a 4.5 star level, but it made it difficult to explain that it wasn't a terrible building. It was actually just wasn't configured in the right way. And because of the rapid uptake of new tools like warehouses, it's just about putting the CapEx plans in place for check meters, for energy management systems, and having somewhere to send all that data. And it's just going to happen faster. We're going to see it all happen in 5 years, not 25 years. It's just a quicker adaptation.
Yeah, I think we definitely see uptake of NABERS for us as definitely future-proofing our assets, because I think that's where it's going to go. That mandatory disclosure for industrial is going to go. Industrials are interesting because it's obviously about location. So, a lot of our tenants are choosing an industrial warehouse because it's big enough for what they want and it's in the right location. So I guess it would be, I think when the market changes to be more competitive for the tenant, then I think that's where it will push through. But as Stephen said, I think it will be it will be the change, and I perversely that I want it to come because it will drive a positive change, and I think that will be really exciting. So,
Yep. And Vass, Diana, you guys excited for potential change as well?
Very excited. Actually. It's been an uphill battle with the hotel sector, and not everyone is, as proactive as Fraser Hospitality. So it's a hard sell because sometimes the owner sits overseas, not in Australia. So learning to navigate that ladder, is part of the learning curve. So I think a mandatory disclosure is going to help us to actually build a case to adopt NABERS rating. And again, NABERS rating, we always talk about it as a sustainability tool, but in reality, it's an asset management tool as well.
Look, when you consider the majority of the hospitality stock that's out there at the moment was built NABERS requirements, we've now got an opportunity to ensure that anything that is done now is thought of from a sustainability perspective rather than just, we can think of it from back of house sustainability perspective rather than the front of house guest issue that the majority of upgrades tend to be when it comes to the traditional hotel upgrade. The front of house guest experience has always been pushing for the big dollar, and the sustainability gear has always been at the back and equipment only replaced as it's required to be. So I think this is changing the theory and the thinking at the moment.
Great. We have another question.
questions over there.
Hi, Ivana, if I can just build on, actually it's not a question, it's just to build on to actually respond to your question about if it was made mandatory for industrial buildings to get NABERS ratings. It'd be great. Like anything mandated, like tenants then have to respond to it. And at the moment we've got metering agreed, so we'll have metering across all our assets. But in addition to that, to get the NABERS rating, we could just write it into our green lease schedule. So it's actually, that works really well for us.
So that's clear from my team.
Yeah, sorry, I was going to say, I'm in Joe's team.
Plant.
Thanks, Claire. Did we have another question?
Yeah.
Yes?
So just a question on measuring. So like working with Acer, like Australian Clean Energy Regulator, I used to work in the IT sector, and I used to collect the, the metrics about the IT and what to measure to map the carbon footprint of IT resources. But in terms of measuring the, for the buildings, like what sort of data needs to be collected? And from the managing side of things, is there any algorithmic way of managing your carbon footprint resulted through the buildings? So one is what data needs to be captured or measured. Second, is there any algorithmic way of measuring, managing your carbon emissions or carbon footprint in the building sector? Thanks.
Diana? What sort of data do you capture?
Who are you going to give it to?
For hotels or in general? Well, I mean, it depends on, the NABERS rules, that's what you follow,
Like power can be one of the things that kilowatt hour usage of the buildings.
That's right.
Let's say how the duct system is made and how the duct is made. What other data can be used to gauge the efficiency of a building? That's if I try to graduate my question.
All right. I'll have to think about that.
So I think from a NABERS perspective, a lot of that stuff is included in our rules. And we're very prescriptive about what is needed to be collected, what data needs to be collected, what evidence needs to be collected to support that. If you'd like to learn more about that, the best thing to do is to sign up to one of our NABERS Assessor training courses, which you can see online. And you'll get a very detailed rundown about what the data is, how to collect it. Diana and Stephen can probably attest to that.
We'll be your supervisors for the first rating.
There you go.
I'll let you know, for us, we report, not just for NABERS, but we report obviously to our investors and upwards. We do energy, water, waste, and we convert that to emissions, scope 1, scope 2. So we include our refrigerants and our diesel, petrol requirements as well from across all our assets. And so, yeah, so waste at the moment, and water and waste are currently the only scope 3 we're reporting outwards at the moment. And we do, in the wider Lease group, when you go to our report, we're doing our scope 3, the tenant data. We're using the tenant data that we've been able to collect from GRES. So it's not 100%, I totally admit that, because we haven't been able to get 100% of our tenant data, but that is definitely, from an investment management perspective, is what's rolled up into the Lease group.
I'll probably give one example that's the opposite, and that's that for solar, solar was always seen as an offset of your building energy use, and you didn't necessarily need to meter it. It was just deducted from how much the building used. But all international standards need to know how much renewables, and they need to have a metered value. So like we're going around and retrofitting a lot of solar systems with meters now to collect that data, not because it's needed for NABERS, but because it's a requirement for other rating schemes.
Great. That's probably about all the time that we have for questions. I might just go through the panel just for a final closing remark. I'll start with you, Stephen.
I'm biased towards net zero carbon. We need to be electrifying everything. NABERS needs to be, giving preferential treatment to electrified buildings. I want to see, the early adopters, get a benefit, give them an extra star, and I want to see all the government people in the room, offering, finding grants and ways to incentivise the adoption of heat pumps. It's expensive, it's complicated, and, early adopters are a bit scared. There's risks there, if we can help them, through...
Yeah, I just want to congratulate NABERS. It's such a great benchmark and tool to use in the industry, and definitely really excited about how it's expanded and the embodied carbon. I think my little shout out might be to my other industrial buddies. The industrial take-up hasn't been that great, I know that, so I'm just going to, guys, get on board. Your tenants aren't that scary. A lot of them want to be part of it, so yeah.
Anna?
Well, after the pat in the back, I think I'll go to the other end, and is that we need to join forces to decarbonize hotels, because it's a very complex sector. And on the ground, at Aegis Plus, we're trying to do the best just to give you all the data to you guys. But I guess our request is for you guys to, now that you built all the tools that you needed to build, to actually start building the expertise of hotels, because the hotel sector are needing to be able to pick up the phone and talk to one of you guys, and you understand what they're talking about, So that's my final remark, a request to continue this partnership.
Great. Vass?
I'll add briefly to that, incentives. If we can generate an incentive to do some work, and grants, as have been noted, it'll raise the game quite significantly. Everyone will get involved. You'll be able to make those changes a lot quicker, and the capex hassles you have going up the chain are reduced quite significantly. So if you can get somebody else to assist with it, you're going to be much better off.
Great, thanks. I want to say a big thank you to the panel. One of the things that I really love about sustainability is that it's this great mixture of technical challenge and behaviour change, and I think you guys have really talked about how NABERS helps you to address both of those and how you use those in your portfolios and your assets. So yeah, it's been really great to hear from you. We have another set of breakout sessions coming up. So you can start making your way to each of those. I'll just let you know where to go to, so you know where to go to for what. We have all electric buildings down the end. We have circular economy, you can stay here, and proposed changes to the next edition of the National Construction Code is next door. So everyone, please make your way to the next panel, and thank you very much.